Oh, exactly. It's 8:05 here, finally. So good evening, good afternoon, everyone, depending on wherever it is that you're calling in from. My name is Samuel Adire, and I'm a part of Lane. And what we do at Lane is we're basically a community of MBA students, alumni, and applicants looking to leverage their MBA experience for more politically and economically inclusive Africa. What we feel is that an MBA is a means to an end, not just for us to gain financial independence, but for us to play a significant role in ensuring that Africa as a whole lives up to its dreams and expectations. One thing that I have found, and many of my colleagues who are currently in different MBA programs right now has found, is that the African representation in MBA programs could be a lot better than it is right now. And that's one thing that has inspired us and my colleagues as well to come and make sure that, whatever gateway, whatever barrier to application or to entry into business school that needs to be brought down, we can play an active role in bringing that down. And that's why you have Lane. So if for any reason you'd like to learn more about the things we've got to offer, Annie will put a Trink link into the chat box for you to see what that looks like. That said, I want to say a very big thank you to Oladapo for being the link. Ola is calling in from the US, and it's been the plug between Lane and Michael, and that's the Johns Hopkins University, the Carey Business School. So I thought I should say hello to him and thank him for making this happen. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest today. His name is Michael Cuneo. I hope I pronounced that right. I've been hoping that I got that. And he is the lead recruiter and admission officer for international students at the Carey Business School. That's the Johns Hopkins University. And today we will be delving into the topic, pointers into a yes in an MBA application. But before I hand over to him to tell us what makes Michael, before I allow him to answer that question, I'd like to encourage every one of us to turn on our video. It does help with the interaction. It's good to see faces and not names. Even though it's a bit dim, we still encourage you to put on your video. We all understand, and it will be fine. Like Mike, I love that. That still looks good. Kende, thank you. Debo, great one. Chidima, awesome. Miriam, keep it up. So I want to see more faces. Exactly. Michael, good. It'll be great to see more faces than names. So Michael, over to you without any further ado. What makes Michael Michael?
What makes me me?
Yes.
Wow. So I'm Michael Cuneo. You're pretty close. Cuneo or Cuneo. It's
Awesome.
An Italian name from north. It's a city in North Italy. That's where my name comes from. What makes me me? I'm actually learning a lot about that. I've been doing a lot of research on Ancestry.com and finding out where my ancestors come from, which has been a pretty fascinating story so far. And I just found out, interestingly enough, that one of my grandfathers, my great-grandfather, who presented himself as being from Spain, was actually a black man from North Carolina whose parents had been born into slavery.
That's interesting.
Yeah, an interesting family story that is just coming to light. So very interesting. That's kind of the American story. But so anyway, I work in admissions at Carey Business School, and I've been doing that for 10 years. It's the longest I've ever worked anywhere. I've always worked in higher ed though, and I love it. I get to travel all over the world and all over the United States, meeting new people and experiencing new things and getting people excited to come to Carey Business School and making that happen. So it's fantastic. Unfortunately, this year, thanks to COVID, I can't do that, which is really terrible. Took away the best thing about my job. And we are been actively trying to get more people from Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, into our programs. It's been difficult, and I'll touch on ways that we can address that in my presentation. Most of the people who come into the program have actually come into the program, folks from sub-Saharan Africa who are already in the United States studying or have gotten degrees in the United States. And we haven't gotten as many successful applications from people located in Africa. And I want to talk about some strategies to address how you can make a better application, and we'll get into that. So
Awesome.
let's
Awesome.
get started with that.
Yeah. So I
So
presume
I'm
you have
gonna
a
share my-
presentation, right? Okay. So I'm going to make it easy for you. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I'll share my screen and go into the presentation. All right. Getting a yes on an MBA application. A lot of it is really good general advice. Well, it's all good general advice for any MBA application in the United States or around the world. And I'll tell you specific things that I've seen that were deficiencies in applications from folks in Africa where I've noticed them. Let's talk about when you're choosing schools to apply to. You should always be choosing more than one school, because you don't want to, as they say, put all your eggs in one basket. The most important thing you should be looking at is fit. So many people look at rankings. Rankings aren't necessarily the best indicator of what school you should be going to. You should be looking at fit in the sense of where am I going to be the most comfortable and get the most out of the 2 years or 1 year that I'm going to be spending studying an MBA. And that may not be, it's not necessarily going to be shown just by rankings. There's so much more that comes into play when it comes to fit. There's the kind of environment, whether it's a small MBA program with a smaller number of students or a gigantic MBA program with hundreds of students. The more highly ranked MBA programs tend to be the ones with hundreds of students. Are you going to be comfortable in that kind of situation? Some people are not. Is your profile a good target for that institution? It's good to dream, but you also have to be realistic. You may not have the profile when it comes to GMAT or GRE scores, when it comes to work experience, when it comes to your grades in other degree programs, your undergrad, to make it realistic for you to get into that school. When you're applying to schools, it's great to have a high target school on your list, but you need to have more realistic schools in the middle of that list, and then a couple of backup schools in case you don't get into any of the higher schools. And people who you're mentoring with and counseling you are going to tell you that. You can't have a whole bunch of schools that are aspirational, that it's very unlikely as the only schools that you're going to get into. Cost, targetable cost. What can you realistically afford? Most schools are going to offer you or have some type of scholarships. But are they going to be full scholarships? That's highly unlikely. So you really have to think about, can you afford to make up the difference? How are you going to afford to make up the difference? You have to have a plan for that ahead of time so that you're not surprised by the ticket price when you get that offer. There's nothing that's going to be more frustrating to you and more difficult for you than you get into a school, you get a couple of offers, 2 or 3 offers, and even with a scholarship, from each of them, you're still not going to be able to afford the tuition. You're still not going to be able to afford to live in the place where the school is. So it's not just tuition, it's the affordability of the city. If it's in a city or if it's in the middle of nowhere in the United States, you have to take all that into account when you're making these choices. So it's not just a strategy of getting into the school, it's the strategy of a realistic idea of what's going to happen once I get into the school, and is that doable? It's a really good way to have a good plan to make everything happen so everything goes smoothly, and you're going to save yourself a lot of frustration and stress and anxiety afterwards. Have a plan, have a lot of backup plans. Practice business skills by having charts and tables for contingencies and what if this happens and what if that happens. Plan, plan, plan. You can't over plan to figure out what's going to happen. If best case scenario, you're going to get a lot of offers to compare. Worst case scenario, you may only get one. That's just the realistic way things are, and it's hard to think about, but just keep all that in mind. Hopefully, by some of the strategies we'll talk about and thinking about your targetable profile, you're going to have a lot of offers. So the application, that's the important part. There's elements of the application that most business schools have, and these are all important. They all come together. There's no one that's necessarily more important than another. All come together to create a snapshot of you as a candidate. So I recommend that when you get your list of schools that you want to apply to, you make a spreadsheet of what each school requires. Don't assume because one school requires something or another school does not require something that it applies to every other school. And do yourself a favor, make a good impression when you submit your application. Be sure you've met all the requirements and submit a complete application. It really shows just a little positive thing on to you if you submitted a complete application, and we don't have to follow up with you to say, oh, you missed this, you have to do this, and kind of work with you to get it done when it should have been done. And these elements that most schools are going to ask for, everybody's going to ask for your transcripts of your previous degree programs, at least an undergrad degree, the US equivalent of a bachelor's degree. They're going to ask for that in some form or another. Everybody's going to ask for your resume. Most MBA programs require or prefer some sort of work experience, professional work experience. That means work experience that requires a bachelor's degree. Most MBA programs are going to require a GMAT or a GRE. There are some waivers that you may get depending on the school you're applying to. You can look into that. Some MBA programs require essays, some do not. There's different numbers of essays. It may be a statement of purpose, it may not be. Double check, don't assume it's a statement of purpose. Some MBA programs are no longer requiring a letter of recommendation. Some are, so you want to double check on that. And there's going to be an interview. Typically, it's going to be, nowadays, it's going to be definitely virtual because of COVID. And oftentimes in the past, it was virtual as well because it was just impossible to force people to travel to the United States or for us to travel to where you are. Typically, they're going to be over Zoom or Skype, definitely face-to-face through video, not over the telephone. So that's what you're looking at for us to create this picture of you. So let me talk about the elements. And these I put in order of how much control you have over it, what you can focus on. Transcripts, your grades, what you did in other degree programs. You don't have any control over this anymore. It's done. It is what it is. Whether you did well or not, there's nothing you can do about that anymore. So if there are deficiencies in your transcripts that are glaring, you can address those in optional essays, or most applications have a place where you can address that. Don't ignore it. We're not going to ignore it. We're going to see it. So don't pretend it's not there. Let us know what happened if there's an explanation for it. If you have a whole semester where you did poorly because you were sick or there was some family thing going on, let us know about it. Everyone's human. We just want to know what happened. Or if you started out poorly, in the early part of your undergrad experience and then slowly got better, just point that out. If you did really well in your major, but there was some part of required courses that held you back, point that out as well. Each school has different requirements for how they receive transcripts. Don't assume there's one policy for all. Again, check the websites, talk to admissions folks. For example, we require all degrees from outside of the US to receive a course-by-course credential evaluation. We don't accept your transcripts directly from your school or directly from you. We need to have it evaluated by one of those agencies. Other schools are different. Your resume. So resume shouldn't be a job description. It shouldn't be bullet points of your daily activities like that would be posted for a job posting if somebody was looking for a job. It should highlight your major accomplishments and your major projects. It's not an academic CV, so don't put, like, if you have an academic history, every article you did and every research project you did. Some highlights are good of major research projects or major articles, but not every one, so it's 30 pages long, which many academic CVs are. Leave off personal biographical information. Some places around the world I've gotten them with birth dates, marital status, religion. That's not done in the US, and don't send that to us. That's really highly personal information and we don't want to see that. Ideally, you should try to craft it for each school when you find out more about the particulars that the school is looking for, what qualities they're looking for in a candidate. I know that's really difficult, but you're going to find out from career development offices that's what you should be doing for each job you might apply for as well. So it'd be a good idea to start getting in the habit of that. Don't assume that the one-page rule applies to all schools. Everyone thinks every resume should only be one page. That's not necessarily the case. I don't mind, as an admissions officer, reading 2 or 3 page resumes if the resume fits these kind of criteria. Just check with the admissions officers folks if they're open to that ahead of time. Test scores. If you are required to take a GMAT or GRE test, please, please, please just don't assume just because I'm really good at math or quantitative materials that I can go into the test and take it blind. Do some kind of preparation. You're not just preparing for the materials, you're also preparing for the format of the test. These are how to pace yourself and the timing, what types of, how these quantitative questions are presented. So you want to do that to really prepare yourself of how it's going to happen, and so you're not going in blind and surprised about how everything happens. Both GRE and GMAT have sample tests you can download and do and kind of see what your weak points are, but definitely do some type of preparation, and the more the better, even if you're really confident in the material. Essays. Stay on topic. Again, most schools have different topics. Prompts like, think about a time this happened, tell us about that. Don't do a statement of purpose. And don't take a statement of purpose you already have written and try to shoehorn it in. It's pretty obvious. It just doesn't read well. Proofread it, of course, and don't reuse essays between schools. In the very least, it's not on topic, and sometimes we'll get an essay where you forgot to change the name of the school, and I see an essay for Harvard or Duke or another school where you forgot to do a find replace. A good rule of thumb is to give a friend who doesn't know, or a family member who doesn't know what the essay topic was, ask them to read the essay and ask them what they think the topic was. If they say the topic is, and it's close to what the topic was or right on, you wrote a pretty good essay. Recommendation. Always get a professional recommendation, not an academic. Academic recommendations just tend to be terrible. Professors will open their grade book and say, so-and-so got great grades, they were at the top of their class, they did all their homework on time, blah, blah, blah. Not very good. If you can't get one from your current boss because you don't want them to know you're going to be leaving, you can get one from a client, a former boss, someone else trusted in the organization. Another thing, the title does not matter. Don't care if it's the president of the company or the CEO or a senator in your government. If they don't know you as an employee, it just doesn't impress us. We want somebody who knows you and your work habits and you as a professional. Prepare them, have a little talk with them, tell them about the program you're applying to and the things you're saying about yourself in that resume, those projects, those accomplishments, and your essays, so that they can sort of reflect what you're saying about yourself and the qualities that we're looking for in the MBA in your recommendation. It's not cheating, you're just giving them a little background on what they should be writing, so it's not blind. The interview. Be prepared. Don't be tempted to take notes and write them down and put them in front of you so that you can read them while we're interviewing you, especially on video. We can absolutely tell when people are reading from notes. There's cues that just give it away, and it just does not come across as genuine, even if you're talking about things about yourself just to be, you think you're making yourself more confident, it just doesn't come across like that. You should know yourself really well, and if you're being honest and genuine about yourself, you don't need to take notes and make things up. Just be confident that you know yourself better than anyone, and you can answer the kind of questions people are going to ask about yourself. If you can't think of something right away, it's perfectly okay to take a breath, pause, and think about an answer, and have a conversation. For the most part, admissions folks aren't trying to trick you or trip you up or be confrontational. We're trying to get more information out of you to round out your application and help you present yourself in the best way. At least that's my philosophy for admissions and for interviews. Ask, whenever possible, consult with admissions officers before you submit your application. So this is one of the places where I see the biggest deficiency with applications with folks living in Africa who are applying to our program. We get a lot of applications with people who've never interacted with us before, who just submit an application and haven't really read through the instructions properly, make a lot of assumptions based on what other schools might do, and submit an application with a lot of errors. So whenever possible, any school, ask questions to make sure before you submit that application, it's complete and that it's correct and it's fulfilling everything that the school's asking for. And if possible, also get an idea about your profile. Ask about your GMAT score. Ask about your GPA and your work experience. The three biggest things. So the GMAT's generally not the end-all, be-all of human experience. It's not going to generally make or break you. Low GMAT won't necessarily mean you're not getting in unless it is extremely, extremely low. And if you talk to me ahead of time, I'll be honest with you with that. If it's so low that I'll be honest and say, you know, you have good work experience, you have a good GPA, but your GMAT is so low, I just can't see the admissions office or admissions committee, which is the faculty and the dean of admissions, letting you in. So I would recommend you retake the GMAT, get a higher score, or don't apply until you're ready. I don't want you to be disappointed and waste your time. Some schools may not do that, but we will. So, and same with some other elements. We will give you an honest, at Carey, we will give you an honest idea of what your chances are. I will tell you, we can give it a try. I'm not sure, and I will say, I really think you have a good chance. In fact, I can't give you a guarantee, of course, because you never know what will happen with an admissions committee. But that's the sort of thing we're talking about. And so that's all the major information. And now I would love to take your questions. But before I leave off of this slide, that's my full name, Michael Cuneo, and Assistant Director of Admissions. And there is my email at the bottom. That's my initials, mjc@jhu.edu. And so if you jot down that, if you have any questions, I am the admissions officer who handles all international admissions for the MBA except for India and China. So I will be your guide to do all your recruiting and admissions all the way through.
Michael, some participants are struggling to hear you, so could you?
Okay. Oh, great.
Okay, could you just adjust your mic or the volume of your laptop a bit? So.
Is that better? I could talk louder. I don't think I can make the microphone louder.
Okay, you could just talk louder then. That would be fine. That would be fine. All right, Michael, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I really picked up one or two other things that were part of the questions I was going to ask you. Before I open the floor up to other people to ask the questions, I'll just ask three quick questions. I'll make it four because you talked about GRE, GMAT, and you said something about very low scores. I know that one question on the mind of many people, many guests here today would be, what is low? Give us a number. What would you consider to be really low?
400, in the 400s or the 300s.
Okay, that's for the GMAT. How about the GRE?
Yeah, we convert the GRE to a GMAT equivalent. So there's if you Google GRE to GMAT, there's a tool by ETS, the people who do the GMAT or the GRE, where you plug in your verbal and your quant and it converts it. That's what we use. Basically, if you get in the 300s, it's pretty much impossible. If you get in the 400s, you have to be otherwise really, really special. You have to have basically a 4.0, a master's degree, incredible work, some other really incredible things about you for me to get you through to the admissions committee. And then in the 500s, we can work with you. Our average for the MBA for us is 650.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I want to point out a great GMAT isn't a guarantee that you're going to get in. So some people think, hey, I have a 750, I'm going to get in. If you have no work experience and a terrible GPA and do a terrible interview, you're not going to get in with a 750 GMAT. So that's the alternate of that coin.
Awesome. Now, I'm going to take you back a bit, a couple of steps back.
Sure.
Who should be applying to an MBA program? Because I'm sure we still have participants that are considering that question. Am I fit for an MBA program? I know someone mentioned it earlier on. Should I consider some other program? Who should be applying for an MBA program?
So a lot of people ask that question from a, do I have the right background? For us, there is no right background. We have people that come from every type of educational and work background that you could imagine. Not traditional business backgrounds, educationally or work-wise. So that question doesn't apply. We've had people come from the arts. One of my favorite examples is a young lady who had a bachelor's and a master's degree in flute performance, who completed our MBA a year or two ago and is now working in finance. So there you go. Whether it's the right fit for you, that is a kind of personal question, and it depends on what you want to get out of your career. For business folks, somebody was asking, I think Devo was asking about business analytics, master's versus MBA with analytics woven through it. I talk about shelf life. Specialty master's degrees have limited shelf life and less versatility. They're a good little jump for people with little to no work experience in the short term. It's great, but if that's going to give you just a jump in analytics, and it's not going to give you versatility in the future. Whereas an MBA think of it as a terminal degree in business, just like a JD is the terminal degree in law. It's going to last the lifetime of your business life, and it's going to give you a lot of versatility outside of business analytics. It gives you lots of opportunity to do horizontal moves into different industries because it gives you a huge, more robust managerial toolkit in different aspects of business. Most business degrees nowadays are going to have some aspect of analytics in them. Lots of them are going to have the opportunity to do a concentration or focus, do electives in analytics. Our degree now has a pathway called Analytics Leadership and Innovation, which has analytics woven throughout it. So it's kind of for you to think about what you want to get out of the degree. It's really a personal question that you might want to talk to a career coach about, or talk to people who are doing what you want to do with your career about. What did they do? What do they think you should do to get where you want to get? Or talk to people who are where you want to get and ask them what they think you should do. It may be a personal bias in my part because I've worked in the MBA the longest. I just think the MBA is the Cadillac of business degrees. And I think if you can do an MBA, it's always the best option because it does have the longer shelf life to the end of your career and the most versatility, because you can do so much more with an MBA than a specialty master's degree.
Thank you, Mike.
Especially if you have work experience.
Okay, so before we take your question, if you don't, yes, I can hear you. But before we take your question, I'd just like to take a quick poll. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, go ahead, take your question. The poll is not coming up yet.
Hi, Michael. This is Ola.
Hi, Ola.
What's up? How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm good. I wanted to kind of speak to the question about the analytics, MBA versus the masters. Um, so the way it works is this. So for Carey, the for analytics, you can go as technical as you want. You will get a foundation in the core courses, and you can go as technical as you like. But basically, what I would say is that the way we're being taught already is how to use the data. So it's from a strategic point of view, not just a purely technical point of view. So you learn how, like in our foundations week, they showed us how data is actually used. I know it might sound like it's straightforward, but I remember the first case we had where they gave us a problem and we were expected to ask for more data, even though we were not told ahead. But some people figured out that for them to solve that problem correctly, they would need some data. So it's not just analyzing the data in front of you, it's understanding if the data in front of you is sufficient enough for you to even solve that problem. So it's more like it's more a bird's eye view type of situation. So they constantly showed us different ways data can be misapplied or can be misused. And as well as the technical stuff, like I said. So like you're not going to miss anything. So for instance, artificial intelligence is a core course I carry, and I think it's the only school that it's a core course, and it's pretty technical. So it really depends on what your goals are, basically.
Thank you, Ola, for that question. Really was
Thanks,
appreciate
Ola.
you for that. Yeah. So, Michael, another question to you before I open the floor up to other people is, why should an international student, most especially an African, why should an African consider the Carey MBA?
Why African in particular? Um, I could let me
The
speak
reason
to
why I'm
international
asking that, okay, international, that's fine as well. But the reason why I was asking that is because it's
and
mainly
maybe I'll
African
maybe
students.
I'll
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
I can help him if you want.
let
I
me
could
start
give a
with
good.
international and I'll let Ola chip in.
Okay.
So
Okay.
since the start of our MBA program, back when it was called the Global MBA, it's been by design 50% international. So we really strive to have a mix of perspectives from around the world because we think that having an international business perspective adds so much to the conversation, to the network, and to what people are learning about how business is done. It's not just from a US perspective. And students are learning not just from faculty who do come from around the world, but from each other. And that's so important to get that perspective from each other and to get that excitement from each other. Um, to be honest, we don't have as many students from Africa as we'd like. I think in this year's class we have two, and that's just not acceptable. We want more. Um, Ola,
Yeah,
why
so
did,
I think
why
I
did
can
you
give
choose? Why did you choose Carey?
choose Carey. Yeah. Okay. So first things first, John Hopkins is top 10 university in the US. If you're going to John Hopkins, people are know, look, you're going to get attention the moment you say you're going to John Hopkins. It's pretty simple. That's one. Two, it has amazing schools. So now Carey's not the biggest school in Johns Hopkins, right? But however, it has great resources in terms of the health school, the public policy school, like education school, like Google engineering school. It has amazing schools. Now, Carey itself kind of reinvented itself this year, so raised a good amount of money, and it many professors hired a lot of new professors, and the level is really high. There's nobody that I've spoken to, there's no employer that I've told that I'm going to carry that is here to reject my call, regardless of employer. Now, you hear this thing a lot to be transparent that Carey is not a target school for certain companies. But the truth is that you're not going to get in those companies regardless, even if you went to Watson and your profile won't let you in. So the point is, it still all depends on you, whether you go to Harvard, whatever. If you cannot get in and carry to say McKinsey, you will not get in even if you go to Harvard. That's number two. And the last point I'm going to make is that the level is high. It is pretty, like, look, after 2 weeks of the program, I asked them for a certificate at the Career Center. I told them, like, if I dropped out now, like, I would have learned so many things. So the point is, then basically the vast network, the school is pretty influential in many multifaceted spaces. So there is absolutely no area of profession you want to get into that you cannot leverage that space, that platform to get into, in my experience so far.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm sure my community or my guests, my members will not forgive me if I don't ask this question, which is the topic for this webinar. What are some of the pointers to a yes in an MBA application? What makes you pick an MBA application and say, you know what, we're meeting this guy, even before you go in depth into the stories and all that? Michael.
Building on what I talked about in my presentation, showing excitement, showing that you're excited to be applying to our MBA, that you did your research about what our MBA is about, and the environment of the school and the program, that you did genuine research, and that you're really excited and really want to be part of it. It really does come across if we're just another school that you're applying to and you don't really know a lot about it. You apply to a bunch of schools and we're just another one. And that's, especially during the interview, very disappointing. You're excited, we get excited. And if we're excited about you as a candidate, that makes us work on your behalf. And so everybody likes to think that admissions is entirely objective, that it's dry and logical. That it is not. It is probably half subjective and half objective. And the subjective part, you want to get us on your side and make us, as the admissions officer, excited about you. So that is, to be honest, coloring our perceptions of you and making us your advocate when we're writing notes about you for the admissions committee, when we are evaluating your essays and evaluating you as a candidate. Us being as excited about you as you are about us, if you're excited about us, is going to do a tremendous amount on your behalf to get you a yes, because the admissions officer is the person who is filtering everything and presenting you to the admissions committee. And that is a huge part of what happens, at least with programs like ours. Now, there are gigantic programs where that's really not going to have much of a part of the decision, where they really don't have much interaction with folks, where if you do have questions, it's going to be answered by somebody that has no input and doesn't read your file and doesn't interview you, and none of that comes into play. But at a school like ours, it does. But for big places where this doesn't come into play, you still can still go through, do your research, find something about that school that you're genuinely excited about, and make it show in your essays, make it show in your interview. Don't be, don't be bored. Don't show that you're bored, or be bored with the school. And if it's a school you're bored with and not that excited about, think about why you're applying to that school. You shouldn't be. And there's going to be a big pet peeve of all my fellow admissions officers, of all the schools that I people I know who work at different schools, there's a point at the end of every interview where we ask you, so do you have any questions for me? Please, 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 please don't say no. That is the worst thing. And don't ask a question like, when am I going to get a decision? Or a foolish question like that. It's not a foolish question, but ask a substantial question that shows you did some good research about the program and really thought about it, and an insightful question, or just a really unusual, insightful, thoughtful question. And I'm not going to give you any examples because you'll write that down and then use that, and, and that wouldn't be fair. But really think about that. That's going to come up, and yeah, think about that. That is really your very, very, very last chance ever in the whole process to impress us.
Right.
Is that moment where you get a chance to ask us questions. That's it. That's the last chance.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are questions queued up for you here. First of all,
Yeah.
you've answered one about the analytics. Someone else asked a question on online MBAs. Does the Carey Business School offer online MBAs?
We do have online MBAs. The only caveat is, so the online MBA is designed, it's part of our part-time MBA program called the Flexible MBA, which is designed to be done in a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 6 years. The only caveat is you do have to come to the US twice, 2 times, over the course of the entire MBA program to take part in a in-person residency, which is 4 days in length. So not 2 times a year, just twice over the entire course of the program. So you can't think that you could do the entire program without coming to the US. You'd have to come twice.
All right. Another question is, how do you view a candidate who's already had a master's degree in a business-related course?
It depends. If it's something like Masters of Finance, that's fine, no brainer. If it's a Masters of Management, we'd look a little more closely at why you want to put the MBA on top of it. It's not necessarily a deal breaker. Sometimes it has to do with how much work experience you have between that master's degree and your MBA. We've actually had some people who have had fresher MBAs, particularly people from India who got MBAs right out of undergrad and then got 10 years of work experience and realized they didn't get as much out of their MBA as an undergrad as they would have liked, and then got a second MBA with us. That's rare, but it can be done. So I would say it depends on the business-related master's degree. But if it's not a management master's degree, then yeah, no brainer, no problem whatsoever.
Thank you. So with the Carey Business School, what are some of the financing options available to students applying out of Africa? Henry is asking that question.
Sure. When you apply for our MBA or any of our full-time master's degrees, you are automatically applying for our merit scholarships. And they run from $15,000 up to full tuition. There is no differentiation between domestic and international students, so we treat everyone the same. Though we are a bit more generous with students from areas where we don't have a lot of students. So on first level, they are merit-based, so mostly based on work experience, GRE or GMAT, and GPA and other degree programs. But there is a little bit of finesse there for people from places we want to get more students, like Africa. So it is possible for exceptional students to get full scholarships. And beyond that, unfortunately, there is not a lot of financial aid for graduate students in general, not just international. We also have for the MBA something called Carey Business Fellows for really exceptional students, students with particularly high GMAT or GRE equivalent, 3 or more years work experience, 3.3 GPA. The GMAT equivalent cutoff is 680. You have to do a second interview. The Carey Business Fellows is full tuition plus a $19,000 a year living stipend. And that, we only have 8 of those a year, but that's open to everyone as well.
Thank you very much for that response. The next question on my screen here is coming from, pulling that up now, is coming from, does the MBA program from Debor says, does the MBA program at Carey have a STEM designation?
We do not. The MBA is not STEM designated.
Okay. Does the Carey Business School, have courses in health sector like health economics, finance, and policy, etc.?
Absolutely. So I talked about that first pathway in analytics, leadership, and innovation. Our other pathway, we have 2 pathways. The second pathway is in health technology and innovation, which is packed full of courses in the health sector, including health economics, health finance, policy, health entrepreneurship, etc.
Okay, awesome. Debo, could you just unmute yourself and ask your question again? I'm not sure I got the PGD part.
Okay, yeah, thanks Samuel and thanks Michael. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. The question is, having a postgraduate diploma in business administration, how is that evaluated by the admissions committee if you're going in for another MBA?
So you have an MBA?
No, it's not an MBA, it's a postgraduate diploma in business.
It should be fine. How much work experience do you have?
7 years work experience.
You should be okay.
That's awesome. I think you can take that conversation further into the middle.
Yeah.
With John. You probably get on a phone call with him and give him more details around your background.
Yes, I sure will.
I want to talk more at length one-on-one with you.
Any other question? Feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question. Chidima, you sent a question in. Do you want to ask in person?
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, Philip, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. A good day once again, and I'm really glad for to attend this session. And my question is in 2 bits. One is that can an individual, okay, so for example, myself, I have just a BSc in an accounting related course, and I have over 4 years working experience in accounting capacity, right? But I've not taken any of either the GRE or GMAT exam, and I look forward to taking the exam by December. So my question is, can one still apply even without a GRE or GMAT score, and even when the admission process is started already? That's my number 1 question. And number 2 question is, what funding is available? Is it total funding, or is it a percentage of, and is it based on your motivation letters and other documents submitted, like the BSc results and the number of working experience? And that is what I want to know.
Okay, thank you.
So question number one, you need to have everything in place or have taken the GMAT or GRE when you apply. So if you're going to take the test in December, you can apply for our second deadline, which is in January 27th. We have multiple rounds. Most schools have at least 3 rounds. So our first round is, the deadline is October 28th. Our second round is January 27th. And then we have a third round. The deadline is April. I advise people, as long as you apply in the first or second round, you're fine. There's still plenty of room in the class and plenty of scholarship money. Scholarships are based on all the same things that admission is based on, but mostly, which is mostly, but not just. The most weighted things are GMAT or GRE, GPA, and work experience. But everything else, essays, recommendation come into play as well, interview. It all comes into play, but those 3 things are the main jumping off point, as it were.
Thank you, Michael. I know we're 1 minute past 9 o'clock, but if you will,
I do want to answer Chadima's question, because I think it's an important question.
Right.
If you did work on teams, that's actually fantastic, because everyone is looking for teamwork, because teamwork is very important. It's a big part of an MBA program, and it's a big part of showing that you will be a great employee when you graduate from an MBA. Team accomplishments and projects are your accomplishments and projects. You were part of that team and you worked on a team. So please don't minimize those, and don't think that they are not your accomplishments. And highlight that you did those on a team, because that's part of what we are looking for, definitely.
Henry has sent this question twice, so maybe we'll just take that. So please, could you speak on the dual program, specifically the dual MBA MSc in biotech? The school website says it's a part-time program. How's this program different from traditional MBA program?
I actually don't know much at all about that program, because you apply to that through one of the other schools at Johns Hopkins. My colleague, Brenda Manley, in our admissions office, is the key person to talk to about that. Her name's Brenda Manley, and her email address is brendamanley@jhu.edu. And it is, I believe, a part-time program that you can do all or portions of online, but that's about all I know about it, unfortunately. And EBON, real quick, the MBA and PH, you apply to through the School of Public Health. The MBA portion is our full-time MBA now, not the part-time MBA. So it has the same curriculum that Ola is doing, which is fantastic change. That just changed this year, which is great. It's a more robust MBA program with experiential learning, and I think it's great. You need a GRE score, not a GMAT score for that program, and you need to have at least 2 years of work experience in some kind of health sector to apply for that program, because you do apply through the School of Public Health and not through our school.
Thank you, Michael. So we're just going to round up now. Thank you very much for spending your time with us today. You could be doing something else, but thank you for coming. Any last words for us, or any other thing you'd like for us to know before we say good?
You guys have my email address.
Can you please just type that in again?
Oh, sure.
Chat box, so that we can see that. Yeah.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and we can also arrange time to chat one-on-one via phone or Zoom. And if it's one of those other dual degrees that I don't work directly with, I'd be happy to connect you with the right person. But otherwise, if you're going to apply to our full-time MBA, I will be your admissions officer throughout the entire process.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ola, for joining us today. I think on that note, I'd say goodbye to everyone who needs to leave now. I will be hanging on for the next 10 to 15 minutes for anyone who may have questions or clarification for us at Lane. But Michael, you're free to go now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Ola, for connecting us.
Have a wonderful day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
You're welcome, Michael.